Hello, everyone, and welcome to your session, Accelerating Drought Resilience in a Changing Climate. My name is Fernanda. I am part of the Global Adaptation team at the Nature Conservancy, and I will be moderating our discussion today. Um, I truly appreciate your presence here today, especially on this final day of conference. I hope you all had a very meaningful week and I'm excited to continue a rich discussion today. And I just want to do a quick overview in our session here. So we will have a keynote presentation to set the tone and the theme. After that, we will move to a series of 4 short talks with dedicated moments for questions and interaction during that. And after that, we will have a panel. We will invite our speakers back to the stage and have a discussion, and I really count on your participation in that point. To start us off, I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Nicole Silk. She's Global Director of Freshwater Outcomes at the Nature Conservancy. Nicole will share her reflections on the essential role of nature in building drought resilience. Nicole, over to you. Thank you.
Stand over here where I'm mic'd, yeah? Yeah. All right. Well, that's a really big picture of me. Um, good afternoon, good morning, good evening for those of you who are joining us online. I am hoping, given that this is the last day of our event here in Stockholm, that we make this experience a little more intimate, and I'm going to challenge the other speakers to begin their talks with a bit more connection to why this topic matters to them and how it shows up in their lives. So to begin, so yes, I work for the Nature Conservancy. I will come back to how we think about water and drought resilience in a moment. But I want to begin with where I live. So I am based in Colorado, and I live in the Rocky Mountains to the west of Boulder, just maybe through 4 miles as the crow flies, to the border of the watershed that flows into the Colorado River. The Colorado River, I think probably many of you know, is a system that is increasingly becoming drier, more aridified over time, and so is much of the western United States. In my life, I have seen systems change. I have become much more aware when I walk in the forest at certain times of the year how my footstep sounds when the moisture is low. I pay much more attention to the health of the forest. I've seen systems through my time recreating, particularly on rivers in the western United States. I've seen systems just shift in terms of their ecology, both from a plant perspective as well as what's in the river itself. So for me, I really do think about water, where it comes from, how climatic patterns are changing, the challenges with respect to water all the time. So back to the Nature Conservancy. So those of you who don't know the Nature Conservancy, our mission is to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. We think about one future where we strive to have a livable climate, healthy communities, and thriving nature. We really think a lot these days about the dual crises of biodiversity loss and climate change. They are intimately connected. You cannot separate them. We have 3 big global strategies that we use to tackle both. Ooh, that's exciting. I had all kinds of blips on my screen there. There are 3 global strategies that we really focus on, so tackling climate change, protecting oceans, lands, and waters, and providing food and water as well. And against those 3 global big strategies and the pathways that are embedded underneath them, the different kinds of investments that we make, I also, because of my role as a Global Director of Freshwater Outcomes, I want to remind us all that the urgency in our freshwater ecosystems is most extreme. When you think about freshwater biodiversity loss, it's actually faster and more intense than what we experience and see in oceans or on the land. And of course, there's a connection between oceans and lands and waters, with freshwater, rivers, lakes, wetlands being the ultimate connector. So with that framing, you may wonder, all right, so how about the Nature Conservancy and drought management and resilience? And the reality is that as we look at our projects around the world, the places where we invest, which include over 400 projects in over 40 countries right now, more if you look at the integration with land, we see drought and the drying out of systems popping up all over the place. With climate change, systems are becoming much more dynamic, much more changeable. Sometimes that means more water, more flooding, more flood risk. Often that means systems are becoming more dry. Sometimes it means both. When I see places that look like the image on this photo, it's easy to recognize the importance of getting ahead of the kinds of drought that we see in the world, right? We think about the impact that less water has on people. As this slide shows, more than 650,000 deaths in the last 50 years, 3.6 trillion in climate-related economic damages. 1 in 4 people were affected by drought during 2022 to 2023. But I think what's even more important is the reality that the challenges that we face with respect to the drying out of systems and the kinds of changes we need to make are becoming more prevalent pretty much everywhere we work. So, one more point about that, about 85% of the people affected by drought live in low and middle income countries. So in a sense, those who are least able to insulate themselves from the effects are those who are most prone to be having to deal with the consequences of this change. I mentioned the Nature Conservancy's portfolio. We work in 81 countries, directly in about 43 with respect to our freshwater portfolio. Many of the places we work are experiencing climate risk, some of them really severe climate risk, and though interestingly, even the places that have been traditionally more wet, they too are experiencing droughts and periods of drying, including systems as big and as wet, or what we think of wet as the Amazon. So building resilience and really digging into water security, dealing with water insecurity, has become a bigger focus for our work and our investments over the last 20 years in particular. So when I talk about resilience, I recognize that I may be thinking about resilience in different ways than you all are. So when you think about freshwater ecosystems, right, you think about lakes and wetlands and floodplains. You might think about peatlands, any place that's wet. The reality is that those habitats, those freshwater habitats, are interrelated to each other. So if you're going to have healthy freshwater ecosystems, there's going to be an interchange between rivers and floodplains, or between upstream areas and downstream areas. You're going to see the movement of fish, of nutrients, of energy throughout that system, and the complexity and the functioning of that system is what allows it to be healthy, and it's what allows it to be able to support life, both our lives as people, but also the species that have evolved with the systems themselves. There's also, of course, a relationship between surface water and subsurface flow and groundwater that sometimes we can't see, but that too is a piece of resilience that we really need to pay attention to. Nature-based solutions can help mitigate the effects of droughts and floods by building into these systems more space for water to move, and more flexibility for the system to shift during periods of drought or flood, means that those systems will be able to change and adapt over time and be able to support the huge amount of life that we know that they can support and do support today. So I would really encourage all of us that are working in this field, and I'm going to have a little bit of audience participation here so you don't fall asleep in this room. I'd really encourage all of us to think expansively from a systems perspective, ecologically, but also from a systems perspective as far as the many, many, many boundaries that water crosses, jurisdictional boundaries, cultural boundaries, administrative boundaries, legal boundaries, as it moves from the tops of mountains through systems and then in some cases out into the ocean. So for those of you who are online, you can participate. For those of you in this room, I'd love to see a show of hands, those of you who are living in places that are dry. All right, so you drop your hands. Places that are more wet. All right, so we have more dry hands than wet hands showing up. I'd love to see a show of hands of those of you who, whether the place where you live is wet or dry, have seen increased cycles of extremes. Okay, that's everybody in the room. So there you go. I did that in part just to remind us all that there are connections across these extremes that we really do need to be paying attention to. As we think about resilience, besides that systems perspective, there are a number of key elements that are listed on the slide. Proactive planning and implementation, integrated multi-scale approaches, looking across boundaries and borders, local engagement and capacity building, innovative investments, supportive policies, and global commitments too. Significantly though, I would really encourage all of us to think from a multi-sectoral perspective. So whether you happen to be a scientist and work with a scientific community, or perhaps you work for or adjacent to a Ministry of Environment or Energy or Health, the only way for us to truly think about how drought impacts humanity as well as nature is to have conversations across all of those sectors and build solutions that both center people and nature in the solutions, and look out in the long run. I would also encourage all of us to think thoughtfully about policy, because I do believe that policy can help create a space where we are encouraged to work together across these different sectors, where we're able to think proactively as well as creatively towards solutions that truly last. Sometimes when we think about drought, when you see spatial analysis or modeling about the future, it can feel kind of tragic and impossible and hard. And I don't always feel like that's a great place of creativity. So I want to share with you over a couple of slides some positive signs. And I think you're going to hear more about that from our subsequent speakers as well. So amongst the positive signs of change, over the past 5 years, 10 years, and even 20 years, there's more and more sharing of knowledge, of data, of tools. There's more collaboration. And I think, I know that some of the newer professional publications that are out there, some of which are shown here, are great examples for us to lean in on. Collaborations like IDRA, the International Drought Resilience Alliance, and also the International Drought Management Program are really beginning to expand interest too. So the more we can talk about challenges about drought, and I would say the more we can talk about challenges of floods and flooding too, gives us some space to be able to collaborate sometimes with unlikely allies. And that's the space often where creativity can really blossom, where it can take seed. Other positive signs. So there have been some big commitments recently to address funding gaps. So for example, the Riyadh Global Drought Resilience Partnership was one of them. Really exciting. It's great to see governments stepping up themselves and coming together and saying, we must do more. There are also increasing numbers of examples that show really the multiple benefits that happen once resilience is restored, and also give examples of how nature-based solutions play an essential piece of those solution sets. And I always love to remind my colleagues when thinking about nature-based solutions, it's not just about restoration or improved management. Nature-based solutions also include protection, also include opportunities to really maintain systems and as much of their natural functioning fortitude as possible so that we don't have to invest in restoration down the road. One thing we do know for sure is that freshwater systems actually recover quickly when given the opportunity. Sometimes you just have to add water to see that happen. But again, if we can get ahead of this game, if we can take that broader view and a longer term view, I think there's more opportunity. There are a couple of examples that I would like to draw your attention to from our work at the Nature Conservancy. So I mentioned the Colorado River when I began my remarks. The Colorado River is a basin that the Nature Conservancy has been working in for a long time, about 40 years. Started out, we were working in a few individual places across the various states that touch the basin. Now we work at a basin scale, really imagining what's possible when we connect the dots of all of our investments and those of government and the private sector across the entire basin. There's more conversation about what do you do with less water in this basin? How do we collectively move together? Some of the investments we make are very much about, of course, working in partnership with the people who are closest to the resource themselves. So in the case of the Colorado River, that's often the farmers and the ranchers that are highly dependent upon that system. But it's also working with the municipalities that need water for the system, from the system for drinking water and other water needs in their communities. So in the Colorado River Basin, we have certainly been working with farmers on agricultural water management for quite some time, looking at efficiencies. So how can you use less water to grow the same amount of crop? In the case of the Colorado, how do those water rights owners not lose water that they let back into the river? How do we think differently about the resource overall? Sometimes that's about switching crops, looking at crops that use water at a different time of the year, perhaps use less water, perhaps have a bigger economic return for the farmers themselves. Other places we work include the Tana River, the Upper Tana watershed, which it's the source of drinking water, the major source of drinking water for the city of Nairobi. And here too, like securing protection for that system really does also mean working closely with those who are closest to the resource themselves and looking at ways to slow water down so that it infiltrates, looking at water banking, really understanding how that ecosystem functions, and then investing smartly in ways where the downstream beneficiaries support and invest in upstream restoration activities that restore the functioning and the connection between the land and the water too. So I think I'm on my last slide. Yeah, so looking ahead, it's, from my perspective, on this issue in particular, the urgency is now, yet we all know we need more examples. We need to be able to point the world to libraries of effective cases or examples from the Nature Conservancy, from governments around the world, from India, from places that are able to demonstrate what's possible, to give us all that inspiration towards creativity and cross-sectoral movement forward. Accelerating nature-based solutions is essential. We've already seen that. We've seen a doubling of investment in nature-based solutions over the last 10 years. I'd love to see a tripling or a quadrupling of those same solutions over the next 10. And those large funding commitments are crucial too. So it's got to be all in, yet we need as many frameworks as possible to begin to understand what we can do together. So I'm incredibly excited for the panel today and for our conversation in this room and online. And with that, I will close my remarks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It was a great and inspireful presentation. Now, starting our short talks, I would like to invite Mario Lotz Pettersson, Deputy Head of Unit Water and Circular Economy from the Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development of Germany. Thank you so much for joining us, Mario.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation and good afternoon to this session. And Nicole, I think I tried to answer your challenge. You said we should link it to our personal history, and I think this is a great question because actually in Germany when I was young, drought was never really a topic. I've discovered it in 2018, 2019, when I was a grown-up already, the first time in my life as a personal experience, because that was the first time when green spaces became brown, when forests died, and that was the first time that water stress became apparent in Germany. And that, I think that's a great question to be in my task with. And with that, I want to challenge you now in the audience, because I found a very nice quote from the WMO Secretary General in the State of Water Resources report, which said, "Water is the canary of the coal mine of climate change." It's a bit difficult to grapple, but maybe it can guide us through the discussion. So as the canary in ancient coal mines was an indicator for lack of oxygen, WMO in this report suggests that water is the element that indicates that our climate and ecosystems are in deep distress. And we see that with floods, with extreme rainfalls, and especially with droughts. And here we can say, yeah, the canary doesn't look good. So we come to the moment that we have to say drought is a new normal. So it's here, it's to accept for us, and we have to deal with it. And of course, it has a big impact. It causes environmental damages, biodiversity degradation, agricultural loss, water scarcity, wildfires, and overall negative impacts on human health and economic stability. And as I said in my introduction, in Europe and also in Germany, even this year we had one of the driest springs in history. And the European Central Bank just recently warned that the European economy is not drought-proof. So an extreme drought would put 15% of economic loss at risk. And I think that's an impressive figure, and we have answered this in the new German national water strategy. And there it is included that we are acknowledging the increasing impact of extreme weather events such as droughts on water security. And as I'm working in the water unit with the colleagues of the agriculture unit who are dealing with droughts, we think that intersectoral approaches are key to tackle this. And for example, speaking about the water and land management solutions, we have to look at the Rio Conventions who tackle these interactive approaches. And especially for us at the water unit, we of course look forward to the 2026 water conference, as you all here in Stockholm probably also do. And drought resilience will also be one of the central topics here in the interactive dialogue for Water for Planet. So I think this is the global framework we're working on. And in Germany, we are convinced, as I said, that approaches like integrated water resources management are key to tackle drought. So, as drought does not stop on a national border, I would like to draw your attention also to transboundary cooperation, which is key for the German ministry. So as the effects of drought and low flow condition in rivers are felt beyond borders, we think that it is imperative also to strengthen transboundary collaboration, which is one of our contributions to the Water Action Agenda, and we are actively engaged in a great Team Europe initiative in Africa and Central Asia. So, speaking about the costs of drought, I think, Nicole, you had that on your slide already. We talk of costs of 300 102 billion US dollar per year. That is a combined GDP of France and Germany per year. 1.8 billion people are affected, and 3/4 of the world's populated are impacted by water stress. You all raised your hand when Nicole asked you who's impacted. So I think this, here in the room, we have probably even more than 3/4. So this shows the urgency for the topic and brings me now to introducing you to a key publication in this field. Oh, that was backwards. The Global Economics of Drought report, which is co-funded by ZMZ and published last year at the UNCCD COP in Riyadh, brought together evidence and sends a very clear message. Pro-action pays. So, what does it mean? We think that it is cheaper to move to a proactive approach in drought management and adapt to droughts before they occur, rather than to wait and react to the increasing effects of drought. So how can we do this? The Economics of Drought report provides the evidence that nature is our strongest ally. So as mentioned, nature-based solutions are a key strategy for drought resilience. And that is extremely important in this report, they make economic sense. Solutions such as forest, watershed, grazing management, or soil fertility management increase the capacity of land and soils to capture and store water over longer times. And in case studies all around the world, they demonstrate that they perform better than conventional land management solutions. So, in addition to that, they are economically viable even when not considering their drought performance. So we think, or what the report shows, is that they pay off regardless of whether a drought occurs or not, and in a sense are no regret solutions. So looking at one of the features of the report is especially when looking at the economic case, we did 50 case studies in 30 countries and found out that there's a cost ratio of up to $27 for each dollar invested. And I just want to quickly show you two examples for this. So let me start with Jordan. The study looked at pastoral communities and found out that there is a benefit of land rest and rotational grazing that makes of every dollar $1 benefit for the pastoral communities, but also a $22 benefit from every dollar looking at the whole society. When looking at Kenya, we found that a nature-based solution or natural terrace and grassed waterways could increase water flow by 8% and aquifer increase by 5%. So looking at the challenges here, how to bring this compelling economic cases, the economic benefits into scaling. So there is a financing gap of several $100 billion per year. And one challenge we face here is that in the first year, there is a negative return. And after that first year, then is where the cost ratio comes into place and we'll have a financial benefit. So we think that we should rethink how we value land and water, and we want to put it into 3 dimensions. So first, we want to build robust business cases and business models around nature-based solutions. We want, second, to increase regulations and policy that create enabling environments. And third, we need innovative financing mechanisms. So, concluding, the evidence and technologies for drought resilience are there, and we think it is now time to scale them up. So, as I've said in the beginning, droughts and other weather extremes are the new normal. So our goal is to make nature-based solutions a new normal as well, tackling droughts and making sure that the cannery gets in better shape again. So thank you very much and looking forward to a good discussion.
Thank you so much, Mario. It was very inspiring as well. Continuing our short talks, I would like to invite Daniel to share some perspectives and updates from UNCCD. Daniel is part of the Global Policy, Advocacy and Regional Cooperation Unit from UNCCD. Welcome, Daniel. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here with you today. Knowing what I went through to make it to today. So yeah, thank you very much, Nicole, for at least challenging us why and what it means for us drought. As you can see, I am in Germany working as a program officer leading the drought portfolio for the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. It is a secretariat. It's one of the 3 Rio conventions together with climate change and biodiversity. But originally, I'm from East Africa, Eritrea, where I grew up. It was I was not introduced to drought in 2018 like Mario, but it was a day-to-day challenge for everyone in Eritrea, and I know it firsthand what it means to go through to drought. So, yeah, I think this is very important topic. I was also discussing with a few colleagues comparing drought with a number of other disasters. Nicole also brought about 650 days in drought. Drought ranks consistently #1 in terms of the lives lost as a result of drought compared to all other disasters, but it is underestimated and there is a lot of, I think it's kindly overlooked compared to floods, which you cannot deny. It is 4 times costlier than, for example, flood. And I have a dear colleague from the University of Nebraska who says floods kill people, but droughts destroy civilization. So I think it's a big issue, and we need to really look into this in a big way. So yeah, I'm going to introduce you to what the UNCCD is doing. First of all, we think that the DLDD, desertification, land degradation, and drought, it is an underreported crisis, especially when we compare it to the biological diversity and climate change. And there was a very important article that was in New York Times where it was complaining about biodiversity being underreported without even having any mention about the UNCCD. So they were talking about the most important global meeting you have probably never heard of is now, and it's about talking about biodiversity. What about UNCCD? So I think it is very critical. We are close to the ground, land and water. It was highly emphasized by Nicole. It was really a very comprehensive speech. So I think it's very important that the global community looks at this as a disaster. And drought building the base for COP17, as you can see, sorry for this connotation, COP16 marked a significant process. We had a COP16 in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, in December last year. And it marked a very significant progress in addressing drought resilience and land degradation. Despite this success, the negotiations to establish a global policy instrument on a possible universal drought regime was unsuccessful, which means there was a lot of commitments by countries to really look into how we can tackle drought, global drought resilience partnership, and the Arab Economic Development and the Islamic Development Bank, OPEC, many others have come together to really put something on the ground to invest on drought resilience. But we need also policy, as highlighted by our keynote speaker, follow up on policy frameworks and thematic issues. So we are at a critical juncture of where to go in order to manage drought in a very sustainable manner globally. So COP16 was very much dominated by the discussion on drought, and we are hoping that COP17, which is going to be the conference of parties, the 17th conference of parties of the UNCCD in Mongolia It's going to happen 1 year from now in 2026 to come up with some solutions. So, drought building the basis for COP17. We have already launched the drought resilience partnership that I said, mobilized a lot of financial support. So I think the action on the ground is going to take place. Countries are now going to start investing on drought resilience and land restoration. So I think there is a lot of hope, positive signs that we cannot escape or look into drought in a different way, but we need to also look for the national resilience or national preparedness on drought. So a bit on the drought resilience partnership. This is a new partnership globally led by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And the objective is to support the shift from a reactive to a proactive approach to managing drought. Drought is not a crisis, it is a risk. For a risk, you need to have a policy approach. You need to be proactive. You need to be prepared. So this business as usual approach of waiting for drought to strike and then acting, which is a reactive approach, is no longer going to work. And then countries have now looked at it. So as already highlighted by the previous speakers, no country is immune to the risk of drought. 55 countries declared drought emergencies between 22 and 23, but many more countries also declared. We have just published a drought hotspots report from 2023 to 2025 with the University of Nebraska, and many countries have now declared. And a lot of countries also do not declare drought emergency, but they are going through a drought emergency which is not declared at all. And I think it has been highlighted by Mario on the economics of drought. Drought causes economics where about up to 10% of the GDP or more is lost as a result of drought. So drought is not about lives and livelihoods, it's also about the economics. You need to invest on drought resilience so that you can also reduce the impacts on the GDP. So this partnership is going to support implementing national strategies where 70 plus countries have now a national drought plan. They know that there is this principle of risk reduction should work, but we need to go beyond that. We need to implement the national drought plan. So this partnership is going to help countries now to start implementing this national drought plan. And the primary partnership objective is to sustainably, substantially improve the ability of countries and regions to prepare for first, and then you adapt, and then you respond to drought events by assisting them in building a sufficient high level of drought resilience. So it is coming up, and the eligibility for countries is about 74 countries are now eligible for this support from this partnership. And we are already going to be launching this operational, hopefully in the next few months. The Drought partnership has an objective to enhance the ability of countries and regions to prepare for and adapt and respond to drought. And it's also going to consultation on the governance framework has already been done in June 2025 in Köln, in Germany. We have already identified some priority areas. The inaugural conference has taken place, and then the operationalization is expected to be early 2026 next year. And this is one. Another sign of hope, as mentioned also by Nicole, is the International Drought Resilience Alliance. It is an alliance spearheaded by the governments of Spain and Senegal, but now more than 40 countries and more than 20 UN and non-UN organizations have joined this alliance. TNC is in the steering committee, and many GWP and many others are also part of this alliance, where we are really trying to look into a building political momentum. This is one of the first pillars because the agenda of drought is now being spoken by heads of states. It is really critical that we were able to get this level, and then now I think the president of Brazil talking about IDRA, and president of Spain, many heads of states are now talking about the alliance, which is really taking a lot of shape. Common framework to accelerate action on drought resilience. This was also mentioned by one of the recommendations. We need some kind of a common framework for action. Drought strikes, but it has impacts differently for different countries. So we need something that can glue the countries. Knowledge sharing is very important. I'm going to mention a few things about this community of learning and practice and the drought toolbox. And innovative financing was also mentioned by Mario for drought resilience. So these are the 4 critical pillars of the IDRA. And Another thing that we are looking into is the IDRO, which is the International Drought Resilience Observatory. It is a groundbreaking initiative championed by Spain and Saudi Arabia now as part of the International Drought Resilience Alliance. It is going to revolutionize, without emphasizing, the global drought resilience, because it is going to be able to connect data and science with meaningful action. In many cases, we have a lot of data, a lot of evidence, but the action on the ground is not really feeding into the data. So it is all about providing the key indicators in a very digestible way for enabling decision makers to select the right strategies, because there is no one size fits all. So it's going to be context specific, and we are going to also guide countries with the right strategies with this IDRO. So the IDRO is, in a simple way, drought resilience indicators are going to be connected with the right data, and there are a lot of options that we are looking into, but the thing is to be able to properly anticipate drought, to prepare for drought and then adapt, means to be able to live with drought, because drought is going to, all projections indicate that it's going to be more intense, more frequent. In terms of spatial extent, it's going to be wider. Many more regions which did not see drought in the past, we are going to be able to experience it in the future. So it is going to be a day-to-day reality for many of us. And the final version of the IDRO is expected to be launched at COP17. The other thing that I wanted to introduce, probably it has been introduced also by our colleagues from Global Water Partnership in a session that we had on Monday afternoon, is the Community of Learning and Practice on Drought Management. I'm very happy that we have a very reliable and established partnership with the Global Water Partnership, but many other partners as well, that we were to be able to successfully launch this Community of Learning and Practice on Drought Management at COP16. The membership is growing by the day, and the rationale behind it is knowledge is out there. It is about really trying to really look into learning from each other. The peer-to-peer learning is very, very important, and we need to really allow this. So if you have a Facebook or LinkedIn, there are people who are interested on drought, and this is a community of those who are interested on this topic. We had a drought toolbox, but it was not interactive enough. But this kind of community really brings together people who are of common interest. They face day-to-day challenge on how to solve a single problem, and they can interact. And we are intensively organizing a lot of webinars thanks to the colleagues from GWP who are here in the room. And building the base for COP17, we are also working on a drought impact tracker. We are also working with the Sahel and Sahara Observatory, OSS. It is trying to track the drought impact. The rationale or the assumption behind it is the impact of drought is underestimated. And in many cases, you have to wait for a country or a national executive to declare drought emergency. This will bring a bit of capacity for people to speak for themselves on what is happening on the ground. So it is going to be based on citizens-based data. They are going to show some kind of photos, what is happening around them with some information, and they are going to feed into that. So people will be able to speak that it is happening. I was mentioning to one colleague here where sometimes countries wait too long to declare drought emergency. So I think it's very important that we empower citizens to speak about their situation, because it is happening on the ground, and they know it, that it is the early signs of drought are happening. So instead of waiting for the high-level authority to declare, I think this kind of drought impact tracker will be able to bring some kind of capacity to speak on their situation. So we have a lot of drought impact tracker, which was also published, launched at COP16. The follow-up, I think this has been also mentioned by the previous speakers. We published the World Drought Atlas at COP16, and it brings together a lot of dimensions about drought, where drought is not only about agriculture or food, it's affecting every segment of the economy, including navigation, tourism, hydropower, health, energy, transportation. So the way to look at drought is now changing. Some countries have to really change or auction or sell their wildlife like elephants because of drought, and now tourism is killed. So there are lots of ways drought is impacting countries what the people in this room cannot imagine. So what we brought in this World Drought Atlas is that economy-wide impact approach for drought. The economics of drought is already mentioned, and a number of others have been published also at COP16. So the pathways to impact, first of all, drought is rising in terms of the global agenda. We need to dominate, it keeps dominating the future negotiations for the UNCCD COPs. It was piling up from COP 13, COP 14, 15, 16, and now we are hoping to have some solid negotiation and agreement by countries on how to tackle drought globally. Drought is not only about food or nutrition issue, it's also about development and security issue. So we should not look at it as easily as absence of rain. It's much more beyond that. We need a systemic approach in order to manage drought. And drought is a long-run game. Of course, it's not a short-run game. We need to, it's not about what is happening. I was also talking to a colleague here where sometimes there was a World Bank study which showed children born during drought times. After 30 years, they were following this. They are more mentally stagnated than those who were born in non-drought times. So there are things that we don't know many about the impacts of drought. So it's a long-run game. There are long-term impacts, indirect impacts that have not been estimated. Solutions must support healthy land and ecosystems, and drought impact data is needed. And this, I think the IDRO is going to be able to show. I think there is some problem with this. It cannot show me all, but I think the most important things I hope I was able to cover. And thank you so much. If you have any question, I will be happy to host them next. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danielle. It was very inspiring, and we are having a sequence of short talks, so I just wanted to stop for a moment and see if anyone has a question for our speakers so far. Could be for Nicole, Daniel, or Mario. Does anyone has a comment? You're more than welcome to raise your hand. We have some colleagues here with microphones to support us. If no one has comment, okay, we do have one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Kenny. You turn it off. Turn on. Okay, turn it off. There you go. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, my name is Kenny, and I'm from IMI, Ghana. My question is actually to Daniel. Daniel, thank you so very much for that insightful presentation. Of course, you know that drought is one of the very much signal that is causing conflict in West Africa. And this conflict has claimed a lot of lives. My question is, considering all these kind of problems, and the strategy from UNCCD, what are the opportunities that you think exist, which IMI, for example, can catch on in improving livelihood in West Africa?
Go back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is important, not only for West Africa, but also globally. That's why these countries or the UNCCD parties are considering to look how we manage drought in a more sustainable manner. So we should stop looking at drought not only about food security, it's not about the absence of rain, it is much more than that. You have mentioned about the conflict, for example, migration. There was a 3S initiative, I think, from West African countries, which I think there was some progress on that. But I think we need to look at it in a more comprehensive manner. The drought issue relating especially with development, peace, security, and a number of issues. So I think this is being discussed, and COP17 is hopefully going to give us some guidance on where to go from now, especially in terms of the comprehensive approach, if we should go for a global framework on drought resilience, or if we should go for a binding agreement like a drought protocol, and many other options were very much discussed at COP16. And it is gaining momentum. It's definitely going to, some hopes that countries will be coming into agreement on what to do next at COP17. So West Africa is part of the community. Yeah, thank you.
Can it be at the end? We need to move on. Thank you. Thank you so much. Moving forward with our short talks, I would like to invite Dr. Giriraj, part of the research group. He is a research group leader for the Water Data and Climate Resilience from International Water Management Institute. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fernando, for this excellent session you are organizing and inviting me to present. I think looking at the previous presentations, and also I realize why I should sit near to Daniel, because he has got $2.3 billion from the Riyadh Global Partnership, right? And it was initially, when the session started, it was quite a drought situation. Now we are seeing situation is getting better. So thanks to Daniel for highlighting those numbers. So I think from the International Water Management Institute, we would like to highlight some of the work we are doing, specifically on new innovations or the catalyst action we have just launched in UNCCD in the last COP16. So I think this is something I always use this word, and it has been spoken by Nicole from BMZ and also from the Daniel presentation, that drought affects everyone and everything. And it was a case that few years back, or a couple of years back, we always relate with access to water or the problems of agriculture. Farmers do not have water, but now it has taken much more larger sectoral impact. And if we see some of the disease-related impact in stunting and wasting, it's increasing still, and we are just cannot ignore just the problem of a very limited sectoral focus here. I think, like Daniel already mentioned, that there was a main momentum that started in 2013 with the initiative of Global Dialogue on National Drought Policies, and I think that was then initiated a program like what Daniel mentioned, and the Drought Resilience Conference recently looked at the review of how the progress has been achieved. And I think from there we see a number of other initiatives, not that some of the initiatives you might be leading or your organization is doing, like what was presented by Daniel, but there is a growing length of initiatives are coming from various institutions and organizations. And then specifically, I just want to, I don't know how to go back. So we have, I think, of course, the screen is a bit lost here with the text here. So one of the important integrated drought management program, when you talk about, one is you need to have a lot of information well in time so that the relevant sectoral institutions can make action, not just 2 weeks in advance. It's not like a flash flood or a flood that where you can bring your evacuation team in advance. But in the case of drought, you need at least 4 to 5 months in advance necessary inputs, whether providing policy decision. Like in countries like India, there is a diesel subsidy is provided so that the farmers can pump wherever the water is available to mitigate the drought shocks. There are a number of other institutions working, including the work of UN, WFP. They provide cash vouchers, providing through IFRC. There are a number of other adaptation interventions are coming, but it starts with the maps and information. Without credible science and data, you cannot get into any drought declaration or drought response planning. I think the only last remedial is the declaration. We don't want to keep seeing a country declaring drought and then looking for development aids, and it will be very peanut of some funds you will be getting. We need to see more proactive thinking of a drought contingency plan, and more importantly, to look at medium to long-term plans. Towards that, what we came with this idea of Drought Action Catalyst. It's an initiative that we are putting together all the CG centers. You might know CG centers are looking for breedings, specifically the genetically modified better crops, and also the livestock, water, fish, and all the sectors we are working on. And this is some initiatives we just begin to work more closely with the partners. So we welcome also the institutions working here. Basically, what we are looking at this point, the catalyst is not something we are looking for logos to collect in our website. It's more to look at how we come with an innovative platform that talks about more on the vulnerability and impact assessment, and also the drought investments that Nicole also has spoken from the TNC. Because investments, ready to investment portfolio is very important, because there is a needed work already done in the ground, is access to climate services, which is in a way growing very well. And we are looking for more co-designing this efforts with a scalable solution, and importantly to look at how do we bring dynamic group of community institutions to work together. So when we look at the core functions of Catalyst, we do see the first part of early warning and risk analytics is pretty much done, in my opinion, in last part of the country. Of course, the granularity of the climate services, the seasonality of the information for different institutions, and the scale of data might vary. But there are a lot of new tools and technology. These are something referred from international water management perspective, but there are many other tools. And we need to really curate solutions, not just a solution taken it for granted. It can immediately scale to any parts of the region. Something very similar to the nature-based solution, or climate-smart agriculture, or the drought insurance. So they have to be localized, they have to be pre-tested, community ownership has to evolve, and also bringing more investment facilitation process. How do you help countries to bring more adaptation fund, more GCF funding, helping World Bank to put $100 million investments. So we need to make sure these investments are ready, and importantly to plug in more private sector investment. And I think a new way of capacity building is needed, because we don't really think of earlier days we use softwares and make GIS. Now you have artificial intelligence, IoT, we have a lot more field sensors, data are there. How do we make partners in the region to have better capacity also on that? And I think the interesting angle we have tested in countries between Zambia and India was the South-South learning. So they came to, Indian delegation came to Zambia, and they conducted the drought management system, provided the drought contingency plan for different sectors. Now they have started building the template for different districts. So I think that kind of a knowledge sharing is more important to look at. I think there is some issues here, but again, what it makes different from the traditional way of working without a catalyst is that we want to bring some of these points, what I highlighted, specifically on the multi-sectoral integration on agriculture, water, finance, health, and infrastructure. If you put together in a country template, then you know what the investments is needed, like what, Daniel, you are referring to the economics of the drought. And we need to look at, again, not just as a national level, but also at the cross-scale partnership of investment. I think this is the picture that we have started, begin to initiate that process in COP16. But I just want to get into the small use case of what it means at a community level. Now, we can say national level we need $2 billion, but it never goes to the community, even a $50 even easily accessible to the communities. So we need to bring long-term resilience. So we have set up a couple of solar borehole. This is the southern province in Zambia, and the communities have led the entire process. Now, if you go to this village, you have a water table is available, when to use water for irrigation, when to use for water for domestic use, water for livestock, and they are really expanded that from one single village site of home garden into 9 to 10 sites now. And these are the first women farmers having access to water to grow crops for the first time in their life. So they are making now close to $27 income by selling high value crops. So the model of we need to see is how do we localize drought resilience initiatives as we go forward here. I think, so this is one of the publications we have, some of that. I have left it with the QR code, and I have a few copies also for you to learn more about this work. So I think the last point I also want to say, we cannot left behind with the growth of artificial intelligence. And we have recently developed India's first AI-based LLM model. And this was pre-tested with communities. I would not go more into the detail, but if you are interested, we can share. It's a Gemini-based LLM model and builds on not just ChatGPT, but it's all the national data that gone into the model development. So we did already the farmers consultation, user design workshop of how this LLM models have to be utilized as they go forward. So there is a mobile version of the chatbot is already developed, and it has been pilot tested for a couple of states already. So I think this is my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And our final speaker, closing our sequence of short talks, I would like to invite Anjali. She's a senior program specialist focused on water resources management and climate resilience at the Global Water Partnership. Welcome.
Thank you, Fernanda, and good afternoon to you all. Taking Nicole's challenge. Why do I care about drought, right? I'm from Nepal, the water towers of South Asia, the lap of the Himalayas, plenty of water, but this monsoon there was a failure. The monsoons didn't come on time, rice production, 40% of the fields are water stressed, and 25% of the GDP threatened in this very small, least developed country in the world, right? There's that connection, but today I have the privilege to present to you a case study. It's one project, so it'll be very on ground, a drought resilience project in East Africa. And East Africa is the location of my first job. I worked on transboundary cooperation in the Nile Basin, different countries, negotiating, planning on how to use their shared waters in this big river. But I realized later, after moving jobs, that drought is a big issue in this region. So we're working on this, and it's my pleasure to share this case study with you. So I'm representing the Global Water Partnership. We are a partnership of over 28,000 institutional partners across 13 independently managed regional water partnerships. And the Eastern Africa Regional Water Partnership is one of them. And I'm presenting my colleagues' work. So many threads that I can draw with the previous speakers. Nicole, you mentioned a positive development. Danielle, you mentioned the WMO GWP IDMP as an important kind of initiative that is there. Dr. Giriraj, your case study also comes, acknowledged the IDMP. The IGAD drought resilience case that I'm presenting was also designed under the East Africa Regional IDMP. So let's set the context for the East Africa IGAD region. We're talking about a place where 260 million people live. All right. Even without climate change, this area faces severe water constraints and prolonged baseline drought. 60 to 70% of its area is arid and semi-arid lands, which receive less than 600 millimeters of rain annually. The dominant livelihoods are smallholder agriculture and livestock. Now to that, we add in the past 2-3 decades climate change. More prolonged, more frequent droughts, and less predictable. There is conflict, which already came up, severe conflict in the East Africa region, Horn of Africa, poor infrastructure, also desert locust invasions. We had a workshop earlier this week where we talked with our project implementers on the ground, and they were describing the nature of invasions, of pest invasions cannot be predicted. They change from year to year. It's difficult to be prepared. Even though they know a drought is coming, they don't know what kinds of pests will come and in what manner. There are opportunities too. On the policy level, there is good institutional leadership, there is political will across the countries in the IGAD region. So the IGAD region has, after a severe drought of 2010 to 2011, when 13 million people in the region were affected, the IGAD region initiated the IGAD Drought Disaster Resilience and Sustainability Initiative, IDRISI. So policymakers periodically meeting up. They have a regional steering committee meeting, very closely looking at the region's needs and pulling in the policy instruments that are necessary. There is the IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center, ICPAC, which is a WMO-certified center. Good data and information that is being pulled together, making available to the countries. So the case we're looking at is the DRESS EA project, which stands for Strengthening Drought Resilience for Smallholder Farmers and Pastoralists in the IGAD region. And because the smallholder farming and pastoralism is the dominant livelihood, this project focused on it. There are 4 components. And these 4 components just highlight the multifaceted nature of work that is needed to tackle a complex challenge like drought. The first one is developing of drought early warning systems. What data do we have? What prediction do we have? Let's get the information systems right, on the early warning systems. Then component 2 focuses on improving capacity of key stakeholders in drought risk management. So what the predictions are available? So what drought early warning messages are sent to communities? If communities are not able to understand that there is a risk coming up, like Daniel said, the drought is not a crisis, it's a risk in the future, in the near future, or the medium time future that can be managed. But if one is not able to understand that information, then there's no use, there's no action that can be taken. So component 2 focuses on the ability to understand and react to it at an individual level, community level, and also the policy level. Component 3 looks at reinforcing the resilience to drought through adaptation, through innovative adaptation actions. So we're looking at innovative water management technologies, improved livestock management, and others. And in component 4, we're looking at enhanced knowledge management and information sharing. So much knowledge already exists. We talked about peer-to-peer learning. That information needs to be shared. It's not a knowledge crisis. It's a knowledge availability and access understanding crisis. So overall, from the adaptation fund, the countries were able to access $14 million, and there's an additional funding that countries are contributing in terms of staff time, etc. So the 4 components of this project are very well aligned with the 4 pillars of a good early warning system. And this is highlighted by the UN Secretary General's Early Warning for All initiative launched in 2022, which aims to have functioning early warning systems in place by 2027, a 5-year target. Let no one be losing their lives because they didn't get the early warning in time. But what these 4 pillars emphasize that it's not only getting the message. Okay, there is a drought coming up. That's not sufficient. You need to be able to understand it. So you need that disaster risk knowledge, right? You need proper warning dissemination and communication channels. But then very importantly, you need to have the preparedness and response capabilities in place. So the project is aligned to these 4 pillars. What does it mean? We talked about the global processes. We got inspiration from our keynote speaker. We talked about the information centers and innovation and AI. But what does it mean to actually implement a project on the ground when we're talking about regional climate information centers, certified by the World Meteorological Organization sitting in Geneva, right? You have the national governments, you have their Met departments. And then you have the subnational governments, and then ultimately the communities in the ground. How do you tackle the challenge of drought when there are so many layers to cut across? So here we have the implementing agency for this project, which is the Sahara and Sahel Observatory. GWP is the regional executing entity. So we work at the regional level, working with regional partners, and at the country level, there is a designated ministry, the ministry that is in charge of drought. And some countries push forward agriculture because drought related to agriculture. And then local governments, community structures. So some highlights of what the project has done across the 4 components. The first is on strengthening early warning systems, but my team emphasized that we should frame that as promoting regional investments in drought, because they wanted to convey that strengthening drought early warning systems is actually an investment. You reduce the risk. You reduce the crisis, you avoid the crisis. So the Eastern Africa Drought Watch has been enhanced through this project. So this is an online platform, it's an open source platform to ensure sustainability and continued customization by various partners that are contributing to this Drought Watch platform. If you Google it, you will see it online, various maps with drought indicators that are made available, updated by ICPAC, the Regional Drought Agency. So this project helped to improve the resolution of the data, blending satellite data, very importantly with local observations so that we're getting accurate forecasts. And then it is developing, it's in the process of developing an early warning system channel linking regional, national, subnational levels. Now we must emphasize here that the responsibility of issuing a drought alert sits at the national level, but there is so much good information at the regional level that there is regional coordination that is needed. So a system that's linking regional, national, subnational level. So providing upstream early warning alerts, data forecasts, but also in the reverse. What are farmers and pastoralists experiencing on the ground? What alerts did they receive? What are they experiencing? So the feedback mechanism. This is how much water, humidity I experience. These are how my crops are doing well or failing. We are integrating, we're not reinventing the wheel, we're integrating an already existing tool, the Africa Drought Impact Tracker, which was co-developed by UNCCD, our good friend at the University of Nebraska, as well as the Sahara-Sahel Observatory. So the early warning systems are being improved, national weather stations being improved, also added, and control centers being established. At the community level, there are some countries that have developed drought management plans at the community level, some at the subnational and national level, integrating climate change aspects and adaptation actions. And this is important because climate change introduces this variability and reduced predictability, which is very important in the world we have today. Organizing regional national trainings, supporting farmers and pastoral groups to establish learning centers, and proposal development for future work. Drought and climate change adaptation actions, I won't go into details, but innovative water and agricultural practices that are drought resistant are being helped. And then knowledge management and awareness creation, cutting across all these activities. My colleagues from Eastern Africa were not able to come here because they are at the GACOF 71, the Greater Horn of Africa Climate Outlook Fora. Happens 3 times a year, which predicts the climate for the next growing season. So we have meteorologists, agriculture specialists from different countries at this fora who are looking at the climate outlook and understanding, co-planning together how they will be growing their crops, managing their disasters in the coming 3 months. I'll leave it at that. Beyond the Dressier project, perhaps, we continuously work with these countries to scale up the Dressier impact. Currently, Dressier is taking place in 2 pilot counties in each of the 4 countries, but the need is so much more. We are continuing to develop programs and proposals and mobilize resources, not in isolation, but in synergy with regional and continental opportunities that are coming up. One opportunity that came up after I had submitted these slides to you, Fernanda, was the launch of the Global Outlook Council on Water Investments in Cape Town last week, where a G20 presidential legacy initiative was launched to support needs on the ground related to water security, and there can't be water security without drought resilience, but water security investment needs two funding, public and private sector funding. So we will be submitting more projects through that. And of course, fostering cooperation and community resilience in a wider, with a wider approach. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and thank you to our TNC colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will ask you to stay here with me, and I will invite the previous speakers back to the stage. I must admit I have been a terrible timekeeper, but intentionally, because these presentations were really interesting with a lot of content to be absorbed, so I thought it would be good to give an extra minute or two to each speaker. So I will invite you all back to the stage. While you're coming back, I will also introduce Johannes Cruz. He is co-coordinator of economics of land degradation initiative in GIZ. He will be joining us from this panel as well. And I do have one question yet from the audience that I was missing the last part. So you please just accommodate yourselves here. We just squeeze a bit, a big crowd on stage. So can we go to that question? Here.
I'll have to remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I promised you.
Yeah. No, it was perhaps when Daniel, you were making a presentation, and I'm Alok Sikka. I'm with International Water Management Institute at Delhi. And Daniel, you were making a point that for drought declaration, that governments, they take longer to declare drought, and they should, in fact, when they know that drought is likely to happen, they should try declaring it sooner. Now, as a researcher, yes, we may think of so, but as a field practitioner, as a policy maker, if I'm sitting at that position, I take it in a different way. Because if so much upfront, if I declare, it involves a lot of financial implications. And also a lot of repercussions, because in the market, the hoarders, they start hoarding the commodities and the grains, thinking in the view that drought is likely to happen, and the government is already kind of scared, and the prices will jump up. So there are a number of reasons why, as a policy planners, we do not really try to do that and wait to not towards the end, but till certain time to this thing to happen. So there are a number of administrative and other economic repercussions that are to be taken into account while declaring drought, because it's ultimately the exchequer and the government has to pay for that.
Yeah, can I?
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. I think this is very, very important. Well, of course, they should declare drought in a timely manner. That means they should not declare very early. As you said, there are a lot of contingency plans that they have to take into account. But declaring drought emergency too late has also a lot of repercussions, maybe to the opposite of what you were saying, because then it is too late to do, and declaring drought emergency uncoordinated effort during drought, it becomes more expensive, it becomes too late, too little. So I think what we should promote is trying to really declare drought emergency in a timely manner. Of course, I have seen it firsthand where countries try to declare drought emergency to save face. They wait too late. Maybe they can try to respond in their own way, but then it becomes too late. But of course, declaring it too early is also not helpful. So I take your point, and we need to really look into that in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you both. So I will do one question for you all, and you can take turns to answer or comment each other's answers. Just feel free to do no script. So what is one thing, it could be a body of research, a global commitment, policy lever, innovative on-the-ground solution, financial commitment, or either related effort that you think is currently missing but would make a huge headway in moving the needle in building drought resilience in the next year? Tough question. Who wants to go first?
Ladies first, I'll
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not an instrument. Maybe I will take, it's a takeaway for me from what was presented today. And it's a simple one, but a powerful one. It's this 1:27 ratio that you presented. So $1 invested in nature-based solutions can have $27 in return when it comes to drought resilience. This, I think, is very powerful. And for me, as a program developer, this is what we're missing in the articulation of the needs, right? I have to convince financiers. It's okay, it's easy for me to convince the financiers who give grants, who are willing, right, who want to do good. But the era of grant making is reducing. Now I need to have a business case, right? So I think this is a very compelling number. It's not an instrument, but like a communication, a very powerful communication tool, I take away.
You're right. Go.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to connect to exactly that idea, and I'm going to throw in another idea that I think would be really powerful. And Daniel already knows the quote because I'm using it quite often. Is as long as the tree that is cut is worth more than the forest that is standing, we really have a problem. So I'm challenging you, all of you and all of us, really to work on those instruments and the data and the information that it does make economic sense to invest in nature-based solutions. And I'm excited about all the initiatives that are already going on, the accelerators we heard about, the innovative finance instruments, the data, etc. And I think it is time to turn the wheel. Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you. You don't need to follow the order,
Okay.
but you want to. If you want to, you can.
It's better.
I mean, I'm coming from a completely different angle, but as you asked what is important for us, I just want to put the global governance again on top. And Daniel, from UNCCD, you know that. And I mentioned it in my speech, just to overcome the silos and working together with the Rio Conventions, the binding instruments, but also putting this into place into the water governance processes that we are now working on. And I mentioned that the interactive dialogue of the UN Water Conference will tackle also drought, and I think this is key for us to align this international process and really work between the Rio Conventions and the water sector. I think this is a big lever as well to then implement on the ground what we have achieved or what we have agreed on globally. So I think that will be my key. Thank you.
Great perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, coming from the UNCCD, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification is supporting countries to become land degradation neutral countries by 2030. And 130 countries have now done this voluntary target setting program. So I think what I missed from our conversation is land is important. If we invest on our land, the water holding capacity, the infiltration capacity, then we can really keep the soil moisture and we can still grow crops during times of drought. So I keep always trying to energize when we think about drought, let's not look up if the rains fall, but look down, can I still grow crops? So I think it's very important that we invest on our land. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't want to repeat because I think what you all said have all been brilliant. I would check mark, check mark, check mark. If I could be additive, I would say, given that we've talked about land and we've talked about finance and opportunity, I would add that I really think we do need the local policies too. So NBSAP's national policy, even local policy, that forces not only that cross-sectoral perspective, but also requires a reconnection or an emphasis on the underlying ecosystem itself, not just land, but also the freshwater side of the puzzle. It's really easy to imagine opportunities that focus on nature-based solutions, but sometimes they can miss the mark still and forget about the importance of taking care of that underlying ecosystem too. So make sure nature, broadest perspective, has a seat at the table.
Thank you.
I think what to say is very difficult at the end, but I would say to Daniel, while he has given a quote of land management, I would say also the importance of land and water management, because you can see in the bottom, but without water, what do you do with the land? It gets desertification. So I think the main problem with 15 years in drought field is that many countries are struggling. How do we really manage the drought? And I think there is a lot of emphasis on nature-based solution has picked up, but the scale of investment in NBS is very low. But I think every country had to go back to the basics of integrated water resource management. And I was in Zambia when I was right after the El Nino, people are standing in a long line and they get one time of food in the whole day with a voucher that the government is giving. But when we ask the river basin authorities and the forestry and other, they do not have a micro watershed plans available. So where the check dams have to be there, what's the water retention methods, what is the soil preservation measure. So unless those basics are addressed, then the nature would come. That's where the nature intervention, it's more of a green infrastructure. But I think the basic principles of how to manage the drought is still a very big question. So that is a review that we need to do. And always in the IDMP and Global Forum we talk, just monitoring and early warning doesn't mean that you solve the problem. So there is a fundamental difference of bringing all this integrated thinking is very, very fundamental. So that is something we'll give a work to UNCCD. How do you really manage the drought?
What an important discussion. I really wanted to recognize your efforts in preparing for this session, many complementary views, and what a great discussion we could have here. Thank you for being here with us in this last afternoon. And I really hope this conversation continues, this connections continues, and I do want to end up with the same sentence our colleague quoted from Daniel. I think this is what I have strongest in my mind. Drought is not a crisis, it's a risk. Let's work on this together. Thank you all.